So today I'm going to make a beef stew. I'm cleaning out the fridge because you know how we all just get lazy and don't cook all the vegetables we think we're going to buy. Well, this is a pot of stew that you can throw all those veggies in and get rid of them without throwing them away. And I'll show you how to do it, and I will show you the recipe as I go. So I'm going to start with, in my pot, I always start with a fairly big pot because when you're doing one of these one pot wonders, you never know what size it's going to end up because it's really hard to determine. So I generally start with a slightly bigger pot. Into there, I'm going to put some lamb tallow. So what I've done is I basically got a heap of lamb fat and I boiled it down and rendered it, and it's created this fat. And that's the best thing for cooking. It's natural, it's got no preservatives or anything in it, and it's a really good form of fat to cook with. So into the pot it goes. I want about a tablespoon of the fat, and then that'll start melting in my pot while I start preparing everything else. So I've got some gravy beef and also some chuck steak. I've got about between a kilo and a kilo and a half of meat here, and what we're going to do is we're going to cut it up into pieces. So I've got a nice sharp knife to do this. It makes life a lot easier, and basically we're just going to cut it into strips like so. So all the way through the meat. Turn it the other direction and cut it across. Hold it nice and firm and tight, cut it across. Now, it's hot here today. I got this meat out of the freezer about 3 hours ago, so it's still slightly frozen, but because it still has that firmness to it, it makes it a lot easier to cut because it's not so floppy. So, as you can see, it's still fairly frozen. See how it's actually keeping a cube quite nicely? Because it's still slightly frozen. I've cut it up into centimetre by about 2 centimetre cubes. And then into my pan. See how this piece of meat, this is, what's this one? This is chuck steak. See how it's got the lines of fat through it? When you make a goulash or a stew, that bit of fat is actually very good in there because it gives it the flavour as well as it stops it from going dry. So you do want some fat in your stew to make it nicer. All the traditional goulashes from Europe, there's quite a lot of fat in them. We're talking at least 10% fat. So don't cut the fat out to actually make a very nice stew. Now some of these pieces, there's quite a big piece of fat in there, as you can see. So just cut those pieces a little bit smaller so the fat will render down and you won't even know that they're in there. Okay. There's the meat in the pot. So that's, a kilo to a kilo and a half of beef. So now you're just going to fry that off and start to get a little bit of colour to it and cook the meat through a little bit because it adds flavour to it. So while that's cooking off, start preparing your other vegetables because we want to get this in the oven if we can in 20 minutes. Because it'll continue to cook in the oven for another 2 hours, but then you can forget about it. You're not going to burn the bottom of the pot. And it's one of those cook and walk away recipes. So I've got 2 onions of a decent size. I'm using red, but you can use white, brown. It doesn't matter, personal preference again. Whatever suits you. You want your heat on high for your meat as well. Make sure you're cooking it as high as you can so that you can start to brown the bottom of the pan a little bit and cook the meat as fast as possible. If you burn the bottom of the pot slightly, that's actually a good thing because it adds in that beef gravy flavour. That's where you traditionally in the European goulashes get your flavour, is by literally burning the bottom of the pot, adding water and stirring it in. So then, I'm going to get a bowl. Put my ingredients in. My bench isn't big enough. So we're going to cut the onion into about centimetre cubes. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to cut the onion across ways and then down the middle. Hold the onion tight in the other direction, like so, once you've sliced it, and then cut down and you'll get nice thin pieces. Like so. Okay, next, I've got 2 capsicums. I prefer red capsicum because the flavour is nicer, sweeter, but any capsicum will work. And if you don't like capsicum, you can substitute, that's fine as well. It's preferable to remove all the seeds. And then you're going to cut them in fingers about 1 centimetre wide and 1 centimetre across, just so create cubes. Doesn't matter if they're not exactly the same shape because you're not going to see them once they're in the pot. If you're wondering how I'm cutting all these vegetables in such a quite fast way, this is a Victorinox knife and they are the best. They are razor sharp to the point where you touch them, you will cut yourself. They're that sharp. But they're really good for cutting vegetables, bread, tomatoes, you name it, you can cut everything with them. They're my best friend, and the best part, they come in like 6 different colours. So I'm getting a collection of vegetables here, sliced up. So I'm just going to stir the stew a little bit. As you can see, it's starting to go brown. The juices are starting to come out of it and it's cooking itself through. All right, I've had this cauliflower in the fridge for a while and see how it started to go brown? I've cut off a little bit of the back that had gone brown just to speed things up, but you can sort of see it's just a little bit brown. All of that can just be cut off. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just because it was in plastic, it starts to just change color a little bit, but just cut it off and use the rest that you can use. And then that front face, I just cut the whole face off, about 2 millimeters off. Just a thin layer to remove that brown bit, and there's nothing wrong with the rest. There's too much food being thrown out. And there we go. There's nothing wrong with that. Then now you can use that whole cauliflower, and I've thrown very little of it away. So with the cauliflower, I'm going to just cut it into sort of smallish pieces. It'll break down further when I cook it. And because this is a stew, everything doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you can put it in your mouth and it's bite-sized, you're good to go. So don't waste time making it all pretty and perfect because it doesn't matter. Okay, next I've got 2 carrots. So top and tail those. Okay, a little secret about cutting carrots. You're going to love this one. It saves so much time. Get your carrot with a sharp knife and you're literally going to, on half the carrot, cut into it like so. And then turn it round and do the same on the other side. And see how I've created fingers? About 1 centimetre square. Do the same on the other side. This time I'm going to do 3 cuts, not 2, because I want them a bit smaller. And then as a result, I have a carrot that is sliced, but still in one piece and very easy to slice. And it's so much quicker than trying to do it any other way. Okay, so 2 carrots, and then together I cut them and I have perfect sized pieces of carrot. If you watched the video, this is the parsnip I picked out of the garden this morning with my tomatoes. I swear they grow like weeds. I have so many of them. So I'm going to put a parsnip in here as well because I have that many of them. Oh, look at that parsnip. All right, we're going to do exactly the same thing as what we did with the carrot. So hold it tight so it doesn't roll. Cut it into fingers one way. And then turn it over and do it the other way. Now, if you're unsure to do this, what you can always do is literally cut off one side of the parsnip, like so. So you've got a flat edge. Then the flat edge will sit on the bench and it'll stop it rolling. So when you cut your second side, you don't have to worry about your parsnip rolling on you, or your carrot or your potato, whatever it is. If it's too fat, break it up into 2 bundles and cut them 2 separate bundles. It's just safer so you don't lose your fingers. The only thing left is the tomatoes, which are out of the garden, but I'll do them, they're so juicy, I'll do them in a second. So again, stir your meat. Because I'm doing a quick stew here, I'm not going to let it brown on the bottom. It's more about getting it in the oven and it'll finish itself in the oven. But there'll be enough flavour in there, even though we're not going to do that. So at this point, your meat's cooked enough. It's brown enough. I'm going to add, I've got some organic wine here. It doesn't matter if it's red or white. Usually beef goes red wine, but at the end of the day, it's whatever I've got open in the fridge. So I'm putting in about 1.5 cups of wine, or emptying the bottle as the case might be. Then spices. I'm going to use about 1/2 cup of paprika, because this is where a lot of your flavour comes in, is through the paprika. So I don't measure anything, but you measure it and you'll get it right. One tablespoon of mixed herbs or basil or whatever flavour you want. And these are just dried ones, then, so you could use fresh. I should really go out in the garden and go and pick some, but I'm too lazy. So this is dried coriander. So I've got a teaspoon of dried coriander and a teaspoon of dried cumin. But again, these are your choice. Change the spices out for your flavor. You could use curry powder, you could use whatever you like. Ginger, it doesn't matter. Turmeric, make it more an Indian style flavored spiced. It doesn't matter. It's up to you what flavors you want. Then is something like this, I'd be inclined, I'm using Celtic sea salt, so it's not as salty as other salts. So I'm going to use a teaspoon of Celtic sea salt, but again, that is to taste. It's one of those things to taste. And I like my pepper, so I'm going to do a teaspoon of pepper, but you might only want to use half a teaspoon. That's smelling and looking so good. Then I'm going to add in all of my vegetables. And let them warm through by putting it on the stove first as well. It's all about warming the vegetables and everything through so it cooks quicker in the oven. So now, my tomatoes. You can just use a tin of tomatoes here if you don't have fresh tomatoes available, or yeah, it doesn't matter. It just depends on, again, what you want. But because I'm growing them in the garden faster than I can eat them, I thought I'd use them this way. The other thing I have done years prior is I've had that many tomatoes, I basically stick them in the freezer whole, fresh and whole, in just a freezer bag. And then when you want to make something like this, you just pull out some frozen tomatoes and you can throw them straight into the stew as well. And they're perfectly fine for cooking tomatoes then. And you don't have all the work of doing anything with them, you just stick them in whole. It's a really good method and it worked really well. These smaller tomatoes, I'm literally cutting them into 8 pieces, so quarters and then half again. Very simple, very quick. Not peeling them, just sticking them in whole. All right. They can go into my pot as well. Okay, you can see why I use such a big pot, because I always produce more than I want. But it freezes really well. So stick it into containers, throw it in the freezer, and then when you couldn't be bothered cooking, your dinner's already served. Now, another little secret is, I go to the supermarket and because I'm by myself, I buy bags of pre-salad mix. They're already done up and they're ready to go. Once they go to the use by date and they start to turn, and they're not very nice fresh anymore, I throw them in the freezer. I take any packaging of sauces or anything out of them, throw them in the freezer. Even though it's lettuce, carrot and cabbage, lettuce cooks very well in stews. The Chinese use it all the time as part of one of their vegetables. So I actually then use that mix in stews and that sort of stuff to bulk out the vegetables, and because it's going to be in there for like cooking for 2 hours, you don't even notice it's in there. And the fact it's gone a little bit brown does not matter at all, as long as it hasn't gone sour. So at this point in time, I'm going to add some water to this pot because it's a dry mix, and then it's pretty much ready to go in the oven. Okay, so I'm going to add the water. I've done the cheats thing and I've boiled the kettle so that I can get it in the oven as quick as possible and walk away. So basically, I've been in the kitchen so far for about 20 minutes to get this whole thing in the pot and cooked, and it's ready to go in the oven. So by having hot water, it makes it quicker. Now, when you're deciding what veggies to use, when you're deciding what to put in your stew, go through the fridge and substitute, whether it's mushrooms or whether it's broccoli or potatoes. Doesn't matter. It's what you've got that you want to get rid of. You can hide a lot of things in stews, and if you have kids, put zucchinis and carrots and potatoes and different things through a blender, and it makes more like a gravy sauce, and then that way you can hide vegetables from kids and they love the flavor of it. So really, this is a one-pot wonder. You can throw anything into it. You can flavor it any way you like and create your own versions. And I do these all the time. It's 20 minutes in the kitchen and dinner is done. So I'll put the water in now, give it a stir. So you want to bring it up to pretty much, you're going to cover it, or it's just under the level of the meat and everything. A little bit more. Pretty much what I had in the kettle. Perfect. If you wanted to make this into more of a soup, add more water. So you'd bring it up more to the top of the pot, as opposed, like you bring it up to more here to make a soup, and then you could actually make it into a goulash soup, because it's just got more water to it. There we go. I'm going to throw that in an oven on 180 degrees. I'm going to stick a lid on it, 180 degrees. For 2 hours. Because it's gravy beef, it's quite tough, so you want to tenderize your meat. So I'd say, yeah, generally about 2, and by putting a lid on it too, it keeps the moisture in, it makes it nice and saucy. Now when it comes to serving this, serve it with rice, mashed potato, quinoa, whatever your choice is. I don't eat a lot of carbs, so I literally eat it like that, or with a slice of bread. So it's personal preference on what you want to do with it, but enjoy. And it tastes really good with a teaspoon of Greek yogurt or sour cream on top as well to get that creaminess, like once you serve it. All right, I'll show you soon what the end result is. So it's been 2 hours and dinner smells amazing. I'll just grab it out of the oven. So here it is. Yum. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll have to see what I come up with the next one. Can't wait to talk to you soon. Bye.